Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast where John Major is still Prime Minister, a pint of beer costs £1.50 and Aston Villa wins silverware on a semi-regular basis. I'm Stu Joslin and joining me is my co-host, fellow nostalgia enthusiast Alex Greenwood. Greenie, thanks for joining me tonight, mate, and thank you for joining me for this series.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I mean, it's the 90s. That's all you need to say. Sign me up.
What could possibly go wrong? We're here to talk about the greatest decade there's ever been. Before we get too far into it, I thought it might just be a good idea to explain how this has all come about and why we're doing it. So as we've said, the 90s is the greatest decade there's ever been. And I guess we just feel that there's so much to explore, so many points of culture and sport and music and things like that, that the rich veins of conversation can be plumbed from that. So
absolutely,
yeah, we're here to just chat about it and have a good time and see how it goes, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's 90s and nostalgia is like, it's just, I don't need anything else. I could talk about that for forever. So why not record it while we're talking about it, I guess.
And get some, get 100 podcast episodes and maybe some monetization out of it somewhere along the line when it becomes the nation's favourite 90s podcast, overcoming Quickly Kevin and things like that, you know. Yeah. I'd naively hoped that maybe we were the first ever people to have the idea of doing a 90s themed podcast, but I don't think we're even in the first 1,000, but we will be the best, I suppose. Well, exactly, accept no substitute. That's what I'll say to our listeners. So for our first episode, we've chosen a subject to discuss that I suppose is pretty close to both of our hearts. We're going to be discussing the best and worst football kits of the 90s. And we've both got our favourites, some iconic kits, and also our least favourite kits of the decade lined up, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm ready.
Great stuff. So again, just to lead into it, the first lockdown, hopefully we're coming out of, as we record this, we're beginning to come out of everything now. And I don't know if it was the same for you, Greenie, but on the first lockdown, when the BBC and other channels started to replay classic sports, not just football, but snooker, golf as well, in order to fill the schedule where there was no sport happening at the time, I was just bang into that. Euro 96, especially when they replayed all of that on ITV4. That was a big one for me. And I read recently somewhere, people like to watch the same TV series over and over again because one of the big reasons they do that is because they know how it ends and it sort of soothes them. There's no anxiety about it. They can watch it and be sure of the outcome. And I think it's beginning to become the same with me for football. I think now I prefer the old stuff to what's happening now. You know, it's
Well, yeah, I know what you mean. I know I think with especially Euro 96 when that was replayed, like, although that said, the Gaz's sliding miss in the semi-final against Germany, where every time I see that I think he has to score that because it's going to go in. You can't not score that. So that never really loses its pain. But I know what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, being an Aston Villa fan, as I've mentioned at the top, you can't really put too much store by results. I've learned that through life. You can't let it spoil your weekend. You just have to. People try and banter me about Villa's results and things like that, but I'm old enough and ugly enough to let it wash over me now. Just finally, before we get going, on YouTube the other day, I came across an FA Cup match of the day from 1994 involving both of our sides. So the first game on was Norwich playing away at Wycombe Wanderers, who had just come into the league at that point, and it was a win for Norwich. And then Villa were playing away at Exeter City, and it was a narrow win with a Dean Saunders penalty for Aston Villa as well. Give me Brian Gunn's ponytail and high-tech boots any day of the week. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, Brian. I actually remember that match because it was one of the very, very rare occasions when Norwich were on the TV. So whenever I hear Wycombe Wanderers, that always sort of makes me think of that match.
Okay.
And Chris Sutton and the classic kit. Yeah. So there is something about that tie that does stick in my mind.
That was a tie where I think was it Mike Walker who was a successful manager you had in the early 90s.
Yeah, great knowledge.
And then I think that was the week that he'd left and gone to Everton.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was like the first game that Norwich had played after that, and there was a big thing about how are they going to play and how are they going to do against lowly Wycombe. But they absolutely smashed them, so there's no problem there.
Yeah, we don't need your mic. We did actually get relegated shortly after that, but
Well, he wasn't a great success at Everton, was he? So I suppose there was. He should have stayed. He should have stayed.
Yeah, he should have done.
Well, let's get into the meat and drink of it then. Would you like to go first with your first classic kit?
Yeah, I'm going to go with one of my personal ones, and it's actually a great link, actually, that last Wickham match we were talking about, because it is the shirt that we wore for that match. I'm going to hold it up. I know this is an audio medium, so this is useless to anyone but you, Stu, but I have, here it is,
there it is.
The classic 92-94 Norwich City home shirt.
Fantastic. Manufactured, if I remember correctly, by Ribero.
Spot on. Exactly.
Fantastic.
I did a little bit of research actually into Ribero because it occurred to me that you don't really see Ribero shirts anymore, or haven't really seen them since about 94.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually do still exist. I'd assumed they were like a continental brand because the name sounds vaguely continental, but they're actually not. They're based in the UK. And their website is truly a thing to behold because it's like it hasn't been updated since 1994. They have testimonials from various satisfied customers on there. The main one being Norwich City, who we last had our kits made by them in '94. They're still using the testimonial, but they mainly seem to now make kits for like kids teams and supply schools and stuff. So a slight sad relegation from the big leagues for them, but the kit sort of known as the Egg and Crest Kit.
All right.
I'm not sure if that's just Norwich fans who call it that, but it sort of describes it somewhat. For anyone who doesn't know what it looks like, it's a classic canary yellow with sort of green and white splodges all over it. So it's almost polka dot, but instead of polka dots, it's sort of just splurges. I've also heard it referred to as the canary poo kit because it does look a bit like it's
say that. That's the name that I've heard for it, but obviously that's a little derogatory towards the kit, and I very much like it, so I wasn't going to say that. Did they brought this sort of design back a few years ago? Did they not?
Yes.
For a set of kits a few seasons ago.
Yeah. I think it was maybe 2015 or 2016. We had a third kit that was basically the same, but it was white. And the dots were yellow and green, so it's kind of like almost like an inverse version of it. And then a couple of years ago, in our promotion season from the Championship, it was kind of an ode to it. So it wasn't quite the same, but it was yellow and it had sort of flecks on the shoulders, which was a really beautiful kit, as was recently voted by our fans as our best ever kit. So there's definitely a lot of nostalgia that will always be there for Norwich fans, I think, for this kit, which is that's why I chose it. Because I think it is a beautiful kit, but also it means a lot to me. It was a kit that we were wearing when I first started supporting Norwich when I was 7 or 8. Yeah, so it's a 92-94 home kit. So it's back in the day when teams would only have a new kit every 2 seasons.
Yes.
Do you know when that changed?
It would have been, well, certainly after the advent of the Premier League, when things began to get more serious with money and stuff like that. Money coming into the game, and then teams realised that they could. I mean, the famous thing, of course, was Manchester United having a different. I think they were the first ones really who exploited that and had a different away kit and then a third kit almost every season. And then soon every other club was doing it as well. So definitely a '90s thing, that the surgence of change kits.
Yeah. But I mean, there's not much else to say about it other than that it was also, I suppose, most famous for non-Norwich fans for being a kit that we wore when we played in Europe, our one and only European campaign, when Goss scored his famous volley against Bayern Munich. Of course, Norwich were the only British team to ever win at the Olympic Stadium, whatever it was called, Bayern Munich's ground at that time. And it's just it's so iconic in Norwich's history, and I think almost any football fan will recognise it as being just a classic early Premier League era kit, and it's beautiful.
Definitely. It's certainly one of the kits that I would think of first when I think of Norwich City, and that's the hallmark of a classic kit, if you ask me. So yeah, absolutely.
What about you? What's your first kit you're going to talk about?
Cool. Well, I will come along to Villa, as I've insinuated a couple of times already that Villa are my team. I'm going to stay in the Midlands. I'm going to go with the Coventry kit first of all. Nice. Which might surprise you, I don't know. But so there's a bit of a lead up into this, but the first football game I can really remember taking an interest in I can remember the '95 FA Cup final being on the TV, and that was the Manchester United and Everton won 1-0. And my mum, who is not interested in football in the slightest, was screaming for Everton. But that's always stuck in my mind. And when Paul Rideout scored that goal, I've never seen her take any more interest in a football game. But the first one I can really remember sitting down and watching was the '96 FA Cup final, which was Manchester United again, but it was against Liverpool. And it was the famous Spice Boys final with the white Armani suits.
Oh, yeah.
And the sort of barbershop candy striped ties.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, of course, Manchester United in red, and Liverpool played in their away kit that season, which was the white and green quarters. That kit, for some reason, really struck a chord with me, and that was the shirt. I didn't have a shirt at the time. I'd never sort of got an allegiance to a team. I was going to be Liverpool because of that kit, and that's the shirt I want. And we were going a couple of months after we were going. It was my first time abroad. We were going to Spain on holiday, and I think my dad, spotting an opportunity maybe to save some money, said, "Okay, when we go on holiday, I'll get you the shirt." Thinking, "Oh, we'll find it in some in one of those outlets that you might find on the continent." I don't know anymore, but you certainly could then. Anyway, so we found a shop a couple of days after the start of the holiday that sold football shirts. Couldn't find that shirt, but what I did find in my size was the Villa shirt that was worn in the '94 League Cup final, and it's the A6 Muller sponsored kit. And I bought that. I like that shirt. I bought that, and that's how I got to be a Villa fan. But anyway, that's we'll go back to that later on. Going back to the quartered strip, which I really liked.
Yeah,
I carried that on, and then ever since then I've been a sucker for sort of a quarter kit, checkerboard kit, geometric kits, all that sort of thing. Is really where I suppose it all started. And Coventry's away kit in '96 to '97, I think they only used it for one season, but it was a red and black checkerboard with the Peugeot sponsor.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I really like that. I've always fancied that kit. I'm always on the lookout to see if one pops up. There are a couple on my favoured classic shirt outlet at the moment, but they're a bit out of my price range. So I've got my eye on it, but I've always fancied that kit. And I don't know if you know this, but it doesn't happen anymore. Chelsea turned up for an away game at Coventry during that season, and they only had their home kit with them. And they were forced to wear, with their home shorts and socks, the red and black checkerboard away kit. Yeah. And some of the players actually went as far as covering the Coventry badge over with medical tape, so that they weren't displaying the Coventry badge. Chelsea lost 3-1, and that is really the last sort of high-profile instance I can remember of an away team having to wear the home team's change strip.
Yeah. Because
the kit man made an error. But yeah, Coventry away, '96 to '97, the red and black checkerboard. I've always had a soft spot for that kit, and one day I'm sure it will be added to the collection.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that kit as soon as you started describing it. But it doesn't actually surprise me that you said Coventry, because when I think of '90s kits, a lot of my thoughts go back to I think '93 and then the '94 Panini sticker annuals, and the Coventry kits always stood out. I've always liked Coventry's kits. I think they're it's just the sky blue is a nice shade, and the '90s ones often had just certain touches that made them really nice. I think actually maybe the first year of the Premier League, their kits were made by Ribero as well.
I think they were. Yeah.
So that's probably why I like them. There's something about those kits. But yeah, good choice. Okay, so my second choice is this. This is an international kit, and this actually is unique, really, because it's genuinely unique. This is not a template. It wasn't this sort of kit where lots of teams would have it with different color combinations. This is so unique that it was actually designed by the player himself. So you probably know who I'm talking about.
Yes, of course.
It's of course George Campos, or Jorge Campos, the Mexico goalkeeper from the early 90s right through to the end of the 90s. Famous for a number of things, but mainly I think, especially in the UK, for his day glow multicolour goalkeeper kits that he made for himself, and wore most prominently, I think, in USA '94, the World Cup in America.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is maybe my favourite World Cup. It's certainly the most nostalgic World Cup for me. First one that I really remember. I mean, they're just stunning. They're so 90s. They're so out there. You just wouldn't really get it anymore. I mean, you definitely wouldn't get it anymore, because I don't think football authorities would allow players to just bring their own kit along. He used to.
I don't think so.
he used to just stitch an Umbro or a Nike badge onto it, if depending on who was making the official kits from Mexico at the time. But yeah, it was all really done by himself, and I think with his friends. And they're just, I mean, him as a player, he just really, as soon as I found out that he was a goalkeeper who also played up front occasionally, I just thought that's the player for me. Yeah, he was just sort of really hyperactive. He was only 5'9", and which for a goalkeeper is nothing. He would just sort of dash around the box. He'd always be off his line super quick, and yeah, with his massive oversized shirt, he kind of looked like a child on the pitch. And yeah, they're just the sort of thing that really appeals to someone when they're whatever I was, 9 years old, you know. And so yeah, his kits, just the best.
I mean, there's definitely something to be said for Maverick players. I mean, we'll get on to my favourite player, Mark Bosnich, in a little while, who maybe wasn't as Maverick as Campos was. But yeah, I remember in '94, I seem to remember him saving a penalty at one point. Also, were Mexico involved in the game? There was like a swarm of bees or wasps in the corner of one of the goals, who like settled in like the stanchion bit, and they had to delay the game while they got rid of the bees.
That could be true. I can't remember myself, but
I'll have to look that up afterwards. Happened. But I'm sure Mexico are involved in that, because I seem to remember seeing him standing around in that kit, watching these guys like poke these bees with like long poles and whatever.
I mean, they're probably attracted to him, weren't they? He was probably stood between the sticks, and then they saw this sort of glowing vision in front of them, and they just thought, that's where we're going to put our nest.
Yeah, as you say, with being a goalkeeper who played up front as well, it's one of those rare creatures when you go on Championship Manager and look him up, and the little position thing says goalkeeper stroke striker.
Yeah,
that always excited me. I remember actually, funnily enough, in Norwich, there was a in Champman 0102, which I know isn't 90s, but this is my favourite iteration of the game. So if I may divert for a moment, Norwich had a reserve or a youth player called Richard Woodrow or Robert Woodrow, definitely Woodrow, who was goalkeeper stroke midfielder. So, and he was useless, but I always signed him.
I've never heard of him. He must have never, kind of made out the reserves.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was a mistake or what, but it was definitely, he was definitely there. So,
okay. What about your next choice?
Great. Well, I'm going to go with the goalkeeper kit as well. We are coming on to Aston Villa now. So, picking up the story from when I bought my Villa shirt in Spain, I quickly became entrenched in the whole thing, and Villa were definitely now my team. Incidentally, they won the League Cup in '96 a couple of months before I bought that shirt, and they have not won anything since. So it's almost like they saw me coming.
Yeah.
We'll win this trophy now, and then that'll be it. We'll stop there.
Yeah.
But
they thought, this is a boy who does not deserve to have any happiness from the game. So that'll be it.
Well, that's what it feels like. It has to be said. But it fits in with my personality so well that if Villa did suddenly start becoming like a Manchester City style side, I'm not sure I would like it.
No,
I think I prefer the downtrodden and
it's like with Norwich
getting beaten and
it's like with Norwich. I prefer being a yo-yo club to a club that's just always up. There's way more ups and downs. I mean, literally, that's how yo-yos work.
Indeed. I mean, I'm sure that we will have our detractors who will say, well, it sounds like sour grapes, but you genuinely do feel like that. Like it's far more. I think you're right. It's far more interesting to like when we got relegated a few years ago and spend a couple of years in the Championship and come back up, and what's happening now and whatever. There's always some interest there. But anyway, we're talking about now. This is a 90s podcast. One of the first things I got hold of was a VHS, which I think my granddad ordered out of the paper for me. It was one of those things where they had a little form that you cut out and posted with your credit card details or a check or whatever. And it was called, and you can still find it on YouTube if you're interested, it was called Aston Villa, The Pain and the Glory. And it was a selection of clips of Villa, some of particular games and some of particular players just cut together. Some clips of particular games, some of particular players, all set to music as well. There's about 10 tracks on there. The '94 League Cup final highlights were set to "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" by Tears for Fears.
Oh, lovely.
And there was a show reel of David Platt, which was set to "Love to Love You Baby" by Donna Summer, bizarrely.
So if you hear these songs, they must immediately conjure these images up, I imagine. Yeah.
They do. But what I'm trying to say is the shirt I'm picking here is the Villa goalkeeper shirt from 93 to 95. It's the A6 Muller sponsored shirt, and it's the what I would call the rainbow shard shirt. I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about.
I know it.
It was a shirt worn by other Asics supplied teams at the time. So there was Blackburn Rovers, Leeds United, Newcastle, I think, wore it as well. But I think it's best remembered for being a Villa shirt. I've just always loved that shirt. It is, as they say, my holy grail shirt. That's the one that I really want to get, ideally with Bosnich 13 on the back in the original A6 lettering. So if anybody's listening who's got one in medium, please let me know. There were other shirts at the time that they supplied as well, like chain shirts and things like that, which are just as garish, if you like. But the rainbow shard shirt is the best remembered, as I say. I think it's best remembered for being a Villa shirt. And it's just got everything for me a 90s kit should have. It's multicolored. It's geometrically shaped. It's linked to a particular player or club, if you like. And yeah, it's my biggest favorite goalkeeper shirt. We'll come on to my favorite outfield shirt of all time. This is my favorite goalkeeper shirt of all time.
Nice. Yeah, I always thought it looked a bit like someone had covered themselves in PVA glue and then jumped through a stained glass window. But
yeah, that's a great way of describing it.
I think shirts that make you think of a specific player. It's obviously more common with goalkeepers, but it's usually helps you sort of create that emotional connection to a shirt, doesn't it? If you also have the emotional connection to a specific player that wore it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which doesn't apply to my third and final favourite shirt, because I don't have any connection to this club in any way beyond loving this shirt and loving most of their shirts. And it's the Hibernian 1991-92 home shirt. And I think it's my favourite purely on an aesthetic level. So the Norwich shirt, the George Campos shirts, that they have an emotional connection beyond just the aesthetic, whereas this Hibernian shirt is just, I think it's a stunning shirt, just the way it looks. It's bottle green, sort of torso with white sleeves, and the Adidas stripes on the shoulders, which are in green, and crucially with black piping, just the perfect black piping.
Yeah.
And it's got that, I don't know what to call it other than 90s mottling effects. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a solid flat green. It's kind of like with so many of these kits from this era, it's got that sort of effect on it. That kind of shiny,
I know exactly
dappling.
What you mean.
Yeah. It's and it's just it just I don't know what to say about it really, other than it just looks stunning. I love green kits. They're really rare, especially in this country. I think if you go to sort of South America and Europe, maybe Germany, they have quite a few teams that play in green. But in this country, it's not very traditional, is it? I think maybe because it's more of a goalkeeper shirt, or I don't know what it is.
Well, going back to the A6 Muller Villa kits, obviously the change shirt for one of those seasons was the famous green, black and orange sort of striped affair,
amazing.
Which has, I think, unfairly over the years shown up on a lot of sort of worst kits ever countdowns. But in recent years, it's had a bit of a sort of revision of opinion, and Villa actually based their third kit last season on that shirt, which I've got in the other room. Yeah. So, but I think, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's Plymouth, I think, in England. I can't think of any other team in England in the top levels who has green as their home kit, really.
I guess Forest Green Rovers, but they've got
Forest Green, of course.
They've got kind of a day glow one, haven't they? Ironically, not Forest Green, but
no, the clue's in the name there, I suppose. But, green shirts. I'd like to see a bit more of it, but as you say, probably the link with it being a goalkeeper's colour might be the main thing there. But that's a really interesting choice. I didn't think we were going to be going Scottish, so I'm really glad you picked that.
Yeah, Norwich actually did have quite a similar shirt. Well, the away version of that Hibs shirt, Norwich also had an away version. It was like that white with the green sleeves. But yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Hibs, just purely because of the kit. Yeah, so that was my third choice. What about you?
Great. Well, as we said before, it's an audio platform, so everything we're showing tonight is going to be not there for the listeners, so you'll have to Google everything we're talking about, I suppose. But I'm actually wearing my third choice. This is the Jamaica home kit from the World Cup in 1998. Now you've said that 94 is your favourite World Cup. Would I be right in saying that that's probably the first World Cup you can remember knowing what it was about and being excited about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I was probably a bit too young for '94, just by a couple of years. But by '98, obviously, I knew exactly what was going on, and this was big for me. So '98 is my World Cup, if you like.
Mhm.
And as I said, I'd probably go for this as being my favourite outfield shirt of all time. So just around the circumstances of the tournament. So I was in Year 4 at Corsham Primary School. The first game
Boo.
for England.
Sorry, that's just a local reference. Carry on.
The first game I remember was for England. Anyway, I'll get on to Jamaica in a second. But the first game for England was against Tunisia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a sort of early afternoon kickoff, lunchtime kickoff.
Yeah.
And there's obviously the famous Des Lynam opening of the TV coverage where he says, "Shouldn't you be at work?"
Yeah.
But I remember, my teacher, Mrs. Johnson, God bless her, I'm still in touch with her today. I don't know how she swung it, but she managed to get the school's probably only the TVs on sort of wheelie stands that you used to wheel about in the club.
Yeah.
They were had straps so that they wouldn't fall off and kill some Year 2 child. She managed to swing it that would be in the classroom and we could watch the game. So I didn't miss that game. I watched that game. Watched all the games for England in the World Cup, and then carried on from there. Really, apart from supporting England, I've become obsessed with the Jamaica team as well at the same time, because it was just something different that I hadn't ever seen before. I'd only really seen at that time with TV and as it was and things like that. You'd only ever really seen European football on the Football Italia or maybe Transworld Sport on a Saturday morning if you were lucky. There wasn't really anything from anywhere else in the world. So this really was the first team I'd seen from the Caribbean, and obviously then there was the influx of players from the Premier League who hadn't played for England for whatever reason and were eligible for Jamaica. People like Robbie Earle, Fitzroy Simpson, I think, was in the squad, who were playing for Jamaica. So they became my sort of second team. I wanted the shirt at the time. My parents could never find it, but they did find a sort of Kappa training shirt, and the whole thing was the Jamaican flag on its side. So I had that instead. But now I'm an adult and I've got a credit card, and when this came up, it's not in great condition. The sort of excellent condition ones go for about 3 times that I managed to pick this one up for.
Oh, okay.
But it is what it is, and it's just great to have it in the collection. So Jamaica World Cup '98. That's my favourite outfield shirt of all time. I would say, the geometric patterns again down the side and everything else, and it's just got everything for me really.
Yeah. It's again, it's something that you don't see much since the '90s, which is just something is a bit out there. I think kit manufacturers back then weren't worried about whether people were going to wear it sort of on a night out or try and look classy, wearing it down the high street. It was just like, well, it's for football players. It's going to be on a football pitch. It can just look bright. It can just look a bit crazy. And it was just a lot more freedom, I think, in the design. I really do not like the kits of the present day. I think we're sort of starting to come out of it a little bit. You're seeing a little bit more variation and some new touches and stuff. But for the last 10 years, it's just been plain blue, plain red, blocky colours. If you wear stripes, it's just plain stripes. That's it. There's just so little variation. You get a third kit maybe every now and again will be pretty out there because they don't expect many people to buy it. But I think actually a lot of third kits are quite popular. I know as a Norwich football shirt collector, it's the out there third kits which are actually the hardest to find online, because I think people did like them and want to keep them because they're different. So yeah, I mean, I fully support that Jamaican shirt. Is Jamaica a team where the badge is just the flag? Is that
that's right. You can just see it there. Yeah, it's just the badge and then Jamaica Football Federation underneath there.
Yeah.
So in the circle underneath. So
nice. Yeah.
Cool. Well, those are our favourites. So I believe we've now got an iconic kit that we're each going to talk about, and then a worst kit that we're each going to talk about.
Yeah.
So again, I'll give you the honour.
Okay, so I'll do my iconic one, which I thought we might clash on. We'll see, but
okay.
I thought it was going to be quite difficult, but actually within about 10 seconds it just came to me. And I think this is the most iconic for me because I think it actually transcends football, and it's the England Italia 90 home kit, because I think it represents like a period of time for people beyond even football. I think people who have never really liked football could maybe see that, and if they're of the right generation, they would sort of see, well, that's 90s, that was Italia 90, that was Pavarotti, that was Gascoigne, and because it just, yeah, like I said, it transcends the sport. And I think aesthetically as well, it's a beautiful kit. I think it's the only England home kit that I've ever really liked aesthetically. I'm not a big fan of England kits generally. I'm not a big fan of Umbro, who made their kits for so long, but this one, it just was spot on. I guess a lot of it's tied to the emotions of that World Cup, which I can barely remember, only being 5 when it was on. But even only being 5, there was still elements of that World Cup that sort of seeped in vicariously. I think Pavarotti, I suppose, and just a sense of it, like my brother and my dad watching it, and it kind of being on in the background. But the shirt, yeah, it's that again. It's got that 90s sort of dappling effect, even though it's a plain white shirt. There's more texture to it than you get now, and the details on the sleeves and the collar, I just think it's beautiful. And I think actually the away and the third kit for England at that point, the away kit was a red one that was sort of very similar, and then the third kit was a blue one, had sort of again dappling on it.
Yeah,
all those 3 kits I think are stunning, and probably my 3 favorite England kits ever. But I just think that shirt sums up the 90s, and yeah, it's great.
Great. Well, we're not going to clash at all, because I totally agree with you. I've actually got a reproduction of the red kit in the other room, nice. Again in the collection. Again, linking kits to certain players. The thing that always springs to mind, first of all, when I think of that kit, I'm not entirely sure it's the same kit actually. It must be, because it was only the year before. But I don't actually think of anything to do with Italia 90. The thing that I think of is Terry Butcher's brains coming out of the front of his head. Yeah. In that qualifier against Sweden, I think it was. And obviously, it would never, ever happen now.
No, there's the health and safety rules that are broken by that incident is to boggle to mind.
Yeah. No, every player on the pitch must have had some of Terry Butcher's blood on them by the time.
Yeah.
Because it happened like 10 or 15 minutes into the game, and it just, But yeah, that's the sort of iconic thing that I think of with the kit. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing, the rocky start, the 1-0 win against Egypt, then Gazza's tears in the semi-final, and yeah, it's something that's lived with the country. And as you say, I think it does transcend football. I think you're quite right. For mine, I'm actually going in the same tournament, and it was between 2 for me. I nearly went for Cameroon. Italia 90 with the massive lion badge. Yeah. But I've actually gone for the Dutch kit, the Holland kit.
Very nice.
In England's group, obviously. And yeah, it's a departure from, again, the more geometrically styled kit they wore in Euro 88, when obviously Marco van Basten scored the goal in the final.
Yeah.
It's very, very clean. It's just the tangerine shirt with the white Adidas piping and the badge. Obviously, most famous for Frank Rijkaard's Flob. Who could forget that into Rudi Voller's lustrous perm?
Oh God. Yeah.
And although I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but I am actually a quarter Dutch, you could say, because my dad is half Dutch.
Wow.
So I always do have a second team in tournaments, thanks to that lineage. I'm not sure if it actually qualifies me to play for them. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, my grandmother was Dutch. I suppose it does. But I don't think it's unfair to say that I appreciate clean kits as well. I think there's a difference between clean kits and boring kits. As we were talking about with the kits today, they're boring.
Yeah. Mostly
boring, but this kit, it's clean, but it's not boring. It's it's still got that dynamic look about it. And yeah, I had no hesitation in choosing that for my iconic kit. It's maybe not one that others would choose, but again, it's always one when that tournament springs to mind. It's always a moment and a team that you think about. So yeah, Holland in Italia 90.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a good point about there's a difference between boring and sort of clean or
Mhm.
or classy. And I think it sounds like the Dutch kit. I can't picture it in my mind, but it sounds quite similar to the Hibs kit I chose, because the Hibs kit I chose doesn't have loads of stuff going on. It's the opposite of George Campos's goalkeeper's shirt, but it's still, it just seems so much more interesting than the kits you get these days. So yeah, I'm gonna look up that Dutch kit when we finish this.
Yeah, well, I mean, odds on the picture you'll see is Rudi Voller in the foreground, Frank Rijkaard in the background, and a little bit of spit in the middle, just heading on its way. But I think it's one of these stories where like they ended up being each other's best men or something like that. Like,
I can imagine.
They became great friends after that.
Yeah. I can imagine Rijkaard just sort of pretending to gob in at him, and it's a big joke, remember that time? Yeah. I think, didn't he do it twice in that match?
Yeah, twice.
Yeah.
And there's again the TV coverage shows. I think Voller's been sent off, and he's done nothing. Like he's literally done nothing. Voller sent off, and he stood there with his hands on his hips, looking at the referee, and he's got his back to the camera, and you can just see it dangling off the bottom curls of his hair. So, yes, a beautiful moment in football history.
Only in the 90s.
Only in the 90s, exactly. Terry Butcher's blood and Frank Rijkaard's Flob.
Yeah.
I suppose that brings us
we should have called this episode that. Let's that could be the subtitle of this episode.
Yeah. It will be all right in the 90s, episode 1. Terry Butcher's blood and Frank Rijkaard's Flob. I like it.
Nice.
So I suppose that brings us to the worst kits that we've chosen. Our worst kits of the 90s. So yeah, what have you got?
Well, I thought when I came to this question, I thought this is going to be difficult because I love all 90s kits because they're 90s kits and there's just something about them. But actually, 30 seconds later, it just came to me and I thought it's obvious. And it is another England kit. It's the England away kit from Euro 96. The famous grey, bluey grey monstrosity.
I believe they tried to market it as indigo at the time, did they not?
Indigo?
I think so. Yeah.
That's absurd. I think indigo's dark blue, isn't it?
I could never understand it either. But
no. I mean, it's aesthetically hideous, I think. It's the badge is in the middle, which is a massive no-no for me. I do not like badges in the middle. The badge should not be in the middle. It's got a grey blue with I think red piping. I think it's red piping, and sort of white touches here and there, and so aesthetically bad, but also tied to one of the most heartbreaking moments in English football history when we crashed out of the Euro 96 semi-final against Germany, and Gareth Southgate's fateful decision to take that penalty. And so it's a combination of those two things, mainly the aesthetic thing, because my most iconic shirt was England's 1990 kit, and we also went out on penalties, but that sort of boosted it in a positive way, I think. Whereas this, because I don't like the way this one looks, the fact that it's tied to this bad event sort of makes it even worse. I'm not sure how that works, but I don't like it, and I don't want to ever see it again.
Well, as well as it being marketed as being indigo, which we've established we don't agree with, I think I read somewhere that the idea behind the design and the colour was so that it looked good with a pair of jeans.
Oh yeah,
and that people would be able to wear it as a casual, a casual look without it being too obvious that it was a football shirt, I suppose.
I mean, the massive England badge right in the middle.
Indeed.
Away, but...
Having listened to other podcasts and interviews and things over the years, I think Southgate has really taken a lot more criticism than maybe he should have done over this, because first of all, there were a lot of established players in that team who hadn't put their hand up to take that penalty, who were penalty takers. And also, as a goalkeeper myself, of sorts, I always get a little bit angry when players are referred to as having missed a penalty when the goalkeeper's actually saved it. Now, if he blasted it over the bar or whatever, or wide of eye of the post, then yes, he's missed it. But I think there's also the fact that the goalkeeper's guessed right and done that and got down and made the save also has to be taken into account, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree that because it's linked to such an awful moment in English football history, and it's always going to be inextricably linked to that. It's always going to appear in these sorts of discussions.
Okay, what about you? What's your worst ever?
I've gone local for this one. I started watching local non-league football in the mid-90s with my dad. My dad works with a guy called Nobby Bush, who's was a non-league striker and then became a manager after he retired. He managed Carlton Town, which is where we first watched. Then when he moved to Chippenham, and most of the Carlton team went to Chippenham with him, we went and watched Chippenham then, who were then managed. He was assisting a guy called Tommy Saunders, who led them to the FA Vase final in 2000, which you might remember. You were there.
I was there, yeah. It was against Deal Town, wasn't it?
Deal Town, that's right, from Kent.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Boo.
Boo Deal. And then we went to Corsham after he left Chippenham. He became manager of Corsham. We went there, and that's where my long association with Corsham Town began. More details can be found in the best-selling book Tales of the South Bank of my non-league endeavours. I just thought I'd get that in there. Some copies still available.
I've heard it's very good, and I'm waiting to get hold of a copy, but sadly lockdown came in just when I was trying to get hold of a copy, but I've heard it's very good.
There's one copy in the Corsham Town club shop. So when the club reopens and starts playing games again, get down there quick and get there.
Well, there'll be queues outside, like on Monday, when people wait to get in Primark. It'll be like the Corsham Town club shop.
Absolutely. I hope so. Anyway, I'll get some royalties off of that, £4 or whatever. So anyway, as I've mentioned, so we were watching Chippenham Town when they got to Wembley in the FA Vase final in 2000. I think it was the second last game to be played at the old Wembley. The last one was the England World Cup, Euro qualifier against Germany, where England lost, and then Kevin Keegan resigned in the showers.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
He resigned in the showers. I know it was raining. Do you mean he was actually in the dressing room?
Yeah, it was in the dressing room straight after the game, I think. Yeah, so I've heard. So for the final, for the FA Vase final, they obviously had a brand new kit with the names and numbers on the back, which obviously they wouldn't normally have had. They would only normally have had the numbers. But my worst kit of the 90s, which I've chosen, is the kit which they wore that season in the run-up. It was manufactured by Spall, who again are one of these firms that you don't really hear too much about anymore, but did quite a few kits in a day. I think they did Wimbledon's when they won the FA Cup in '88. I think that was a Spall kit. But this is a Spall kit, and it was. We've been talking about the difference between boring and clean or dynamic. This was a boring kit. Mm-hmm. It was just plain blue all the way through, a little bit of white piping. But the biggest problem I had with the kit, and still have today, were the sleeves. I've been unable to find any actual pictures, just by looking around on the internet. So the best I can advise people to do is go and watch the Road to Wembley documentary, which is available on YouTube. If you look that up for Chippenham Town, you'll see the kit I'm talking about. Now, nominally, they are short sleeves, but the sleeves come down literally to the wrist on some of the more diminutive players.
Yeah.
And only slightly further up the arm for the taller guys. I don't know if this was a fashion. I can't remember it being a fashion at the time for kits, but the sleeves on this kit were just baggy and deep and long, and it didn't look good, and it's always bugged me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good. No. There's no excuse for just making a bad fit, is there really?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the fact that they've then worn this kit in the run-up to the greatest game in the club's history, and it's been documented and it's always going to be there, just irritates me a bit more, really, that these baggy sleeves are always going to be there. But I suppose, if anything, they're of their time, as we say. It's something you wouldn't see today, and we're better off for it. But at the time, when I was like 9 or 10, I couldn't understand it, and now I'm 32, I don't understand it.
Yeah. You've been thinking about it the whole time.
The whole time, the whole 21 years, I've been thinking about it. Yeah. I really enjoyed that, Alex. Thanks so much, mate.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. And yeah,
hopefully this is the start of a there's no need to thank you to thank me, because of course you are my co-host, and this is an equal operation.
that's true. Yeah, I guess we kind of saw this. We were going to kind of maybe alternate who would take the lead on each episode, and this was very much your episode. So I will thank you as the lead of this episode, and when we do a future episode about Limp Bizkit, then you can thank me for
yes, absolutely. Well, I'm sure I'll be thanking you next week when you have me as a guest on your episode about the liver run, which is going to be our next chat. Do we want to give our listeners a little preview about what that's all going to be about?
Yes. So the liver run was wasn't just any. It was probably the premiere episode of a series called Police Camera Action, which was it's up there, I'd say, with The Sopranos, The Wire, maybe Breaking Bad, sort of in the sort of canon of great TV programs through history.
I've got no hesitation in agreeing with that.
Yeah, so it's a classic episode of a classic series, and I won't say any more than that. But we'll be discussing it on the next show. So yeah, you be there, because
great stuff.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to this first edition of It'll Be Alright in the 90s. I've been Stu Jocelyn. That's been Alex Greenwood. And subscribe, sign up wherever you get your podcasts. Spread the word, and we'll see you again next time.
Goodbye.
Bye for now.
If any of you want to get in touch with us, some comments, some feedback, some abuse, or if you have any suggestions for future episodes, then we have an email address, which is allright90s@gmail.com. So that's allright90s, one word, @gmail.com. And we're also on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @allright90s, all one word.
Look forward to hearing from you. Fire up those dial-up modems.